Alright, so Samsung? Android? Well, they're most common for Android phones and really good hardware. And I'll tell you why they've been dominating the Android market for a very long time. Maybe not this phone, but like other phones like the S21 and the S20. And I'll tell you why. Alright, so starting off with screens. Some knowledge that you might want to know is Samsung makes screens for Google phones and iPhones, which is nuts. That means their screens are really good. So Google has been making really good AMOLED and OLED screens for the past couple of years, maybe even a decade or so from now. So starting with the Samsung S1, their first Samsung phone that's been really good, or starting with the Samsung or the first S lineup from Samsung. They've been using Samsung Super OLED technology, which is exactly like AMOLED or OLED from iPhones. They make really good Super OLED screens or Super AMOLED screens that they still use on their Samsung S21 series and Note series, which are still absolutely amazing screens. So as you can tell, each OLED screen has pixels which have a mind of their own, or like OLED, which means some of the pixels on the screen, when it's meant to be dark, it will just turn off completely when it thinks it should be. And so you can have completely dark displays or dark places on the screen and really bright colors on the other where it needs them, which is really good. So you can get a really good color accuracy on these kind of phones, unlike phones from Apple from back before iPhone X. So they used to have a technology which was called LCD. Those LCD screens used to have a backlight to turn on the pixels up front, so it does have a little bit less of a deeper black, which was not as good, but still pretty good for those standards, but not as good as Super OLED screens or Super AMOLED screens. The reason is they don't have control over their own brightness. The backlight has to change variably according to what the display needs, and not all the pixels will turn off completely when the other pixels need to be on, which was one of the biggest downsides of LCD. That's why Samsung in the screen department has been doing really well. Alright, let's talk about performance. So the performance on the Samsung Galaxy S series has been really good across the whole time and the whole lineup, starting from day one, which was from Samsung Galaxy S. They had the chip which was called Samsung Exynos processor. It was really fast, and a few other companies did have a similar processor equivalent, but wasn't able to keep up with the performance as Samsung had in their phones. Well, it was because of the thickness and the amount of cooling they wanted on their phone, which was outperforming most other mainstream Android phones, which made Samsung a really good phone for a very long time and still is to this day. And with the Samsung S3, they still do, and it has a 1.4 GHz processor, which is pretty good and very fast. The only reason I don't use it is because the battery life is just trash. But coming to that later. Still, with the Samsung S21, the performance is really good with a thin and pretty nice looking just whole phone in general. It does rock a Samsung 888 or Snapdragon 888 chip, which is very fast and very snappy, and one of the best in the lineup so far. So with the Samsung S21 series, they've been using the Snapdragon 888 chip, which actually has been beating all the other mainstream Android phones that other Android phones have been using. Even if it did had the Samsung or the Snapdragon 888 chip, it still was performing one of the best out of all the other Android phones, which is really surprising. And compared to the thinness of the phone, it's really good. Obviously, they do output some amount of heat, every CPU does, but with a thin and really sleek looking phone, what do you expect? It's really good, can maintain a threshold for a very long time or longer than few other mainstream Android phones, and can do very well in daily performance and tasks. Alright, so cameras. Cameras for Android or for Samsung has been phenomenal in the past few years and still are really good. So the only reason Samsung is or has been having a really good camera experience on their phones for a very long time is because of their hardware. They've been doing a little bit with their software, but it's mostly or mainly their hardware doing most of the work. Unlike Samsung and iOS phones, which have, not Samsung, but Google and iOS phones, which have been doing a little bit with their hardware on their camera, but a lot with their AI photography with their CPU and enhancing the photos that way. But in Samsung phones, they've been having a lot of really high-end hardware in their cameras. Obviously, it doesn't make a big difference as long as you're not taking, you're taking really good photos. But if you're not taking really good photos, what's the point of the good hardware? That's why you do need software to enhance the photos and make it look decent or pretty good. So Samsung has been doing really good with their hardware. As I was saying, Samsung with their Samsung S21 Ultra phone does have a 108 megapixel camera, which is really good if you want to work with lots of pixels and you want to crop in without losing any data, or without cropping in without losing a lot of data, which is really nice and really powerful as long as you have a little bit of AI powered processing in the background. But photos from these phones have been really good. Maybe the only downside from these Samsung phones are the tend to over sharpen photos, which is my preference, which is really good, but in other people's preference it's kind of bad and not good to look at. But most people won't even really notice as long as you're not cropping in too far to see the over sharpness and a little bit out of clarity, but that's only if you crop in a lot. Otherwise, for me, I really can't tell the difference between this and the Google phone, which has a lot of AI photography going on. But on the other hand, a lot of people do notice the difference even without like cropping in. But it's fine, especially for me. I do tend to like over sharpened photos, but not by too much, just a little bit. So you can have a little bit more sharpness and still have the good natural clarity of what hardware can give you on camera. Alright, so those were one of the really big main reasons why Samsung has been leading in the Android market. Yes, Android market is huge, but the mainstream Android phones like OnePlus, Samsung, Google, and a few others, Samsung has been one of the best in all of those lineups because of all the processing power, the screen benefits, the battery benefits too, which have not gone over, but battery has been really good on Samsung phones too, but tend to degrade over time pretty quickly. But as long as you upgrade like every 3-4 years, you should be fine. And their camera performance, which have been amazing, especially on the newer phones compared to other phones too, even on the iOS side. But you may tend to see the over sharpening a little bit, but for me, that's pretty good. Anyways, Samsung phones have been really good in the past few years and have been amazing with their camera, screen, performance, and just everything in general, even battery, as I said. So that's the reason why Samsung has been dominating in the Android market for a very long time. Anyways guys, thanks for watching. If you like this video, like it, and if you want to support the channel, I reached 100 subs, and yeah, let's just get to 1,000 subs as soon as possible. Anyways guys, I'll see you around. Peace.